Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. Today we've got another of our daily Pride Month decks. This is deck number 4 and it's titled Loving Yourself. And if you've missed the first couple of videos, we are doing a Pride deck for every single day for the entire month of June, where we are using 2 non-partner commanders to make a commander deck, working with a budget of $100 or less, and that way we have a reason to celebrate the diversity of the LGBTQ plus community for all of June through some of the magic that we are playing. So our deck this week has obviously our 2 commanders, and they are Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker and Illyrios Enraptured. So Kiki-Jiki is 2 red for a 2/2 legendary creature goblin shaman. He's got haste, and you can tap it to create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That token has haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And Kiki-Jiki's partner is Illyrios Enraptured, which is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature human. Illyrios enters the battlefield tapped. Illyrios doesn't untap during your untap step if you control a reflection, and when Illyrios enters the battlefield, create a 3/2 blue reflection creature token. So with both of these commanders, we're going to take a look at some of the themes for this deck and break down how exactly this works, what we're trying to do, and what the general goals are of the deck. So our first major theme is going to be copy effects. We want to copy our own creatures, and some of the best ways we can do that is with Irenicus's Vile Duplication, which is 3 and a blue for a sorcery that says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. If we can remove the legendary clause from any of our creatures, we can immediately put ourselves in a position to very quickly just win the game, especially if we can copy our commander, Kiki-Jiki, because a non-legendary Kiki-Jiki can then be copied by Kiki-Jiki, and then all of a sudden we have an infinite amount of hasty Kiki-Jikis that can do some absurd nonsense. So ideally, we can make a ton of copies of any of our creatures, whether they've got enter the battlefield effects or relevant abilities, but Irenicus's Vile Duplication is one of the best ways to do that. Moving on to our second theme of the deck, this one is going to be coercion effects, or maybe theft effects, ETB effects, anything that's going to enter the battlefield, take a creature, and give us a reason to continuously take our opponent's creatures or get some sort of value out of it. And the best example of this is Coercive Recruiter, which is 4 and a red for a 4/3 orc pirate. Whenever she or another pirate enters the battlefield under your control, gain control of target creature until the end of turn, untap that creature. Until end of turn, it gains haste and becomes a pirate in addition to its other types. Now, the initial reason that this seems powerful is obviously it comes into play. We take an opponent's creature, we can tap our commander, Kiki-Jiki, to make another copy of it, we can take another creature, but it actually becomes even more powerful than that because this is once again another combo piece with our commander. Because if we have Coercive Recruiter, we can make a copy of it with Kiki-Jiki. That copy of the recruiter will come into play, and we will gain control of target creature, untap it, and give it haste. That does not have to be a creature our opponent's control. We can untap our own commander, give it haste, which it already has, but more importantly, it is now able to tap again to make another copy of Recruiter, allowing us to essentially, once again, go infinite, making an infinite number of hasty 4/3 orc pirates. So as long as we have ways to take a creature, untap it, and give it haste, we will always have a way to go infinite. And then finally, our last theme of the deck is going to be damage effects. We don't necessarily want to win the game through combat. We can, of course, especially if we're making all of our hasty attackers, but being able to make copies and clones of things, they're going to be entering the battlefield. So with something like Impact Tremors, we're able to turn that to our advantage and win the game. Because Impact Tremors is 1 and a red for an enchantment that says whenever a creature you control enters, this enchantment deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if someone has, say, the worst card in the game, Spore Frog, and we make an infinite number of hasty attackers, they can still prevent us from winning the game. But with impact tremors, we're going to do an infinite amount of damage and still win the game even though we don't necessarily have to go to combat. That is a huge boost in power to the deck, and as you can tell from our themes, this is definitely a combo style deck. So your opponents, once they see Kiki-Jiki in the command zone, maybe less so on Illyrios, they're going to be very confident that they have to watch out for these effects, and if they're not prepared for it, this deck can very easily win out of nowhere. So those are all of our themes for today, and the next piece of our deck tech is to take a look at some key cards. These are cards that are incredibly important to the game plan, might be win conditions or value pieces, but no matter what, they're kind of the MVPs of the deck. So our very first key card is going to be Sean, Father of Synths, which is 3 blue-red for a 3/4 legendary creature human scientist. Whenever you attack, you may create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of target attacking legendary creature you control other than Sean, except it's not legendary and it's a synth artifact creature in addition to its other types. But when Sean leaves the battlefield, exile all synth tokens you control. The reason that this is going to be so important is because it creates, once again, a non-legendary copy of a creature, and that creature is a permanent copy. It doesn't go away at the end of turn like a lot of red copy effects tend to do, because that means that we can then make a copy of something like Kiki-Jiki or Illyrios and get some enter the battlefield effects, and also, as I mentioned before, if we copy our commander, kind of just go infinite. So it's very difficult, honestly, in this deck to not go infinite with Kiki-Jiki, but it is very possible that maybe you don't want to do that, so if that's the case, then just don't make a non-legendary Kiki. Moving on to our next key card, this one is Brutaclad Telcore Engineer. Since we are making a ton of tokens, Brutaclad is one of the best token cards that we can have, because it is 4 blue-red for a 4/4 legendary artifact creature Artificer. Creature tokens you control have haste, already beautiful. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. This means that if we make a copy of, say, a Coercive Recruiter, we can then turn all of our tokens into copies of the Coercive Recruiter, essentially giving us our pick of the best token in play and letting all of our stuff become that thing. This also means that it doesn't have to be creature tokens. If we need treasures and we've made treasures, we can copy those. Same with clues or food or anything else that may be relevant to what we're trying to do. And worst case scenario, Brutaclad makes a 2/1 mirror, so we can just have all of our stuff become mirrors instead. Moving on, though, to our final key card of the deck. This one is C Double. And C Double is 2 blue-blue for an instant. This spell can't be copied. And choose one, but if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. The first is Copy Target Spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And the second is Create a token that's a copy of target creature. This is an incredibly efficient way to make a token, so even if we discount the Copy Target Spell mode, I think it's still worth the inclusion in the deck. But being able to do both of those things if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, which in Commander is most likely going to be happening, it becomes one of the best cards in the entire deck. Being able to copy any spell, it does not have to be an instant or sorcery, and then being able to make a token copy of a creature, already very powerful. Notably, it doesn't make a non-legendary copy, so I would highly recommend you not copy something like Illyrios or Brutaclad or any of our legends in the deck, but it's still very worth it just to kind of copy the best thing in play. That, though, brings us to the end of our key cards section for today, and the next thing I want to do is highlight some cool interactions in the deck. These are cards that work really well with each other, and in some cases are just fun cards that I think are worth mentioning because they may not get a shout out otherwise. That means our first cool interaction is going to be between Jaxus the Troublemaker and Pestermite. And Jaxus is 3 and a red for a 2/3 legendary creature human warrior. You can pay a red and tap it to discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, but you can activate it only as a sorcery. It also has Blitz for 1 and a red, so you can blitz it in, give it haste, and then sack it at the end of turn to draw a card. One of the best cards that we can copy with Jaxus is Pestermite, which is 2 and a blue for a 2/1 creature fairy rogue. It's got flash, flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may tap or untap target permanent. The reason this is going to be relevant is it's kind of like a build your own windfall effect. With Jaxus, we can discard a card for 1 red mana, tap her to make a copy of the Pestermite, which will then come in and untap Jaxus. So we can essentially discard our entire hand, or at least all the cards we don't want, make that many Pestermites, which all have haste and flying. We can attack our opponents, and at the end of turn, when we sacrifice all of those Pestermite tokens, we get to then create a ton of draw effects, and we can essentially refill our hand. So for every card we've discarded, we get to draw, and that is a pretty solid effect. Now, it's obviously not going to win the game immediately. A bunch of 2/1 flyers aren't going to take people down from 40 life, but it's still a great value engine that's able to let you kind of pick and choose what cards are in your hand at any given time. Moving on to our second cool interaction. This one is between Naruha, Master Wizard, and Ghostly Flicker. And for those of you that have watched videos on this channel before, you'll notice this is one of my favorite combinations of cards, and I put it in pretty much any deck that has blue. And yes, we're kind of a combo deck already, but who's to say we wouldn't need a backup infinite combo along the way? So Naruha, Master Wizard is 2 blue for a 3/3 legendary creature human wizard. She has flash. When she enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and other wizards you control get +1/+1. One of the best spells to copy with that is going to be Ghostly Flicker, which is 2 and a blue for an instant. Exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. So essentially how this works is if we cast Ghostly Flicker, we can then cast Naruha to copy the Ghostly Flicker that's on the stack. We will let the new copy target Naruha and anything else, say maybe an island. We can then let the copy resolve. We will flicker Naruha and the island. They'll both exile, come back into play. We can tap the island for mana. And then the new Naruha can copy the original Ghostly Flicker, allowing us to infinitely blink Naruha and infinitely blink anything else, which if it's a land is going to make us infinite mana as we tap it in response. Plus we get any enter the battlefield effects from creatures or artifacts. And then it's kind of impossible to lose from that position, because worst case scenario, we generate infinite mana and can then cast our commanders, which will probably go infinite with something. So that is why I wanted to include this interaction and make sure that it is at least well known. This is a combo deck, so I imagine adding one more combo is not going to be that terrible, but if that's not your thing, then you can remove a card or just don't copy Naruha with the Ghostly Flicker. That, though, brings us to the end of our deck tech, and the last thing we've got to do is take a look at the price of the deck. And this week, our total deck price came in at $89.09, with the most expensive card in the deck being Determined Iteration at a massive $14.87. So when I first put this card in this deck, I had no idea it was this expensive, and honestly, I'm not 100% sure why. Because it is 1 in a red for an enchantment that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, populate, the token created this way gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. While this is a powerful effect, I don't really understand why it's a $15 powerful effect. So if you do know that, I'd love to hear why in the comments, but it's still a very good card. I do think that if you wanted to trim on budget, you could very easily cut this and it wouldn't really affect things too much, but that is up to you if you decide to build the deck. That is the end of our deck tech for this Pride Day, though. So what we're going to do at the very end of our deck tech is, of course, give a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of our patrons and channel members. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Thank you to everyone who watched this far. If you've watched all of our daily Pride Month decks, I really appreciate it. I would love it if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. That lets me know that people want a little bit more of this. And like I said, if you've gotten this far and haven't liked, subscribed, whatever, that is perfectly fine. I do understand, but I want to thank you nonetheless. So once again, thank you. A happy Pride Month to everybody, and I will see you all on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.